So here we have the hill, and it is more than likely, not just highly likely, it is very, very, very clear and evident that out of all the places, this definitely, I believe, without even having to question it, is the actual Brighouse. And I've gone through the details in the other videos to do with the strange facts and circumstances with the Robin Hood tale, saga, mythology, with his last arrow, yet it fits perfectly from the bow of the earthworks, which are clearly a bow of Castle Hill, and firing straight from the bow of Castle Hill comes to this, which has been referred to as the burial mound. Yet it is the exact dimensions of hill forts, if you know hill forts. The only difference is that there aren't any distinguishable shaped earthworks. It is only a mound. So it really, apparently Varley did some excavations there, but was he right? Now the problem is that we've got all these trees growing on it and around it, and unfortunately the trees will have all grown deep root systems. So if you took the trees out, it would damage a lot of the ability to clearly investigate the earthworks. Really could do with finding out how old the trees are. Obviously they'll have some rings around them, so it's called ringwood anyway, so you'll be able to age the trees. Were they put there by Beaumont or Ramsden or earlier, De Lacy or before that? So you can see in the top the houses they do look so tiny, and otherwise it wouldn't look very big, but because you can see how small the houses are on the top there, it is a substantial amount of area on there, and it is a little bit smaller than Old Oswestry Hill Fort. So you can imagine how much space Old Oswestry had on it when it was occupied. And the fact it's flat on top, it just, and it's the recent period. It's just that I can't believe that it did manage to make it to the early 60s, 70s intact, and it's only recent, after the advent of obviously at the turn of the 1900s, you've got this Victoria Tower, and then we get the ICI, which they thought it was a good idea. Imperial Chemical Industries thought it was a good idea, King George, but to what sacrifice to build up an area that is all countryside with such heritage, and to pack it in with houses, which doesn't seem to make sense. And the fact is that this is the fact. So that's Dalton there. We can see a bit of green on the top. And then, so the corridor to the river is actually there. If you look to the top of those trees now, you see on the left-hand side, we've got the bank coming down from Rawcliffe Dalton, and then at that side, that's actually called Nab Hill, but they also call it Dalton Bank, but it's opposite Dalton. So straight down that channel there, you can see now, that is going towards the river, which is, see those two chimneys there? The white chimneys right in the middle, in the distance. So that's where the river is, so you just have to go on there. And it was meant to be an ancient river coming past. We don't know if it went fully around it or just past it, because the prehistoric Britain maps show that it had water around it. And the word Waterloo is only recent. If you look at the old speed maps and the other ancient maps, they don't have those names. Now, if you come up to Kirk Heaton now, you see, look, there is not that much, so much built-in houses. It's quite nice. Now, the thing is, rather than build actually on the top of it, I mean, they could have put houses at the top of there, looking across at it, and up the top of there, the top of Kirk Heaton, where the Blacksmith's Arms is, and at Hopton as well. And they could have given people a nice view up there. They could have, got some compulsory purchase orders off of farmers for houses, because of the fact that this is an ancient site and monument. Now, when they made the ICI, obviously they're going to want people to work there. My granddad worked at the ICI. But there was no need to build on the top of this. And it's clearly obvious, with Castle Hill being so close to it, and you've got Dunelm, I don't know what Varley was playing at or what advice he was giving. Now, you can just see there, at the very, 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 in the middle at the top, you can see a little bit of a, there's the tower from behind that ridge, just next to where the tree is. Where the pinnacle of the ridge is, go to the left, and you can just see the Victoria Tower. But obviously, if the Victoria Tower went on, it won't be able to see it from there. But where it dips down, just to the right, which is where that tree just grows up, and then the top branches of the tree go over the horizon there. Now, when you're actually on that hill, and if you look through the trees, it's very difficult to see through the trees now. Even if you live in those houses, you can't really see out properly, which is kind of sad and upsetting, really. I mean, because it's not even given them much of a point to be on there. When you're on there and you look across and you've got a little bit of a view which is more over that way, then you can actually see the level platform of the Castle Hill, Camberdenham Hill Fort. Now, it's likely that this might have even been the Roman name might have even been Camberdenham, because it's actually near the river, and the river bends Huddersfield. But, the word, when they're naming camels, it's the hump shape, which is also like a bend, because a hill is a bend in the earth, and then it carries water. This did have water going through it at one point. It's got the river past it anyway. So, it's odd that you can get some camels with one hump and some camels with two. But yeah, then there's also that Dunelm. And there's all the other... Then there's the fact that we've got these slightly different form shapes, which are long barrows. Two of them, because Castle Hill effectively is a long barrow. It's a giant long barrow, which is occupied like a hill fort. And then you've got the Dunelm one. And then you've got the Pool Hill at Marsden, which is actually got... It's a living, growing thing in season. In September, in the month of September, it's a living organism growing hill. And then Dunelm one has around it. Now, if you've got, like I said, if you've got an order around England, a religious order that has long barrows as part of its symbology and ritualistic culture, then you would think that long barrows, being having a long barrow order, then you might have a place that is that they originate from or are based around. And if it was in the middle of the country, it would be more convenient for all the other long barrows that are around the coastline, like Wales and Scotland, and down in the Cotswolds. Now, there's different shapes. We've got round barrows and round temples and round burials. So it could well be that there are different orders or different specialisations, because not only you've got the recumbent stone circles, which in Scotland, and they seem to be specific to North East Scotland and Aberdeenshire and the Cairngorms, and then you've got the cairns, which are again a bit more different. And then you've got these, and that is the place for those moon alignments. That is the place where those moon alignments line up. And if you watch Howard Crowhurst in his videos, like his Megalithomania ones, Carnac is a special place, and Carnac had, temples there. And Howard Crowhurst, he he's from my point of view that he doesn't believe all of the temples were burials. You've got burials for burying people, and then you've got temples for the religious order. I think some of the temples, when there was a war on or some sort of, when we were basically invaded and occupied, I think there's something happened and they got shut down or in past generations or times, and I think they ended up being burials, but they were temples that ended up being burials. Some were specifically burials only, depending on the layout. There are different forms and structures of these, which, I have certain... the thing is, the archaeologists change them and mess around with them and then build reconstructions, and they don't build them exactly how they were, and then they tell you one thing 1 minute, then you sort of make your own assumptions from what they've told you and how they've built it, and then they go and change their mind and say, well, no, we actually only put like that for this purpose or that purpose, and then, where it's clearly evident that some of them are interactive, seasonal, or made so that they have a function, interaction with light and sunrise. You don't, like Gail Higginbottom saying, a lot of these dolmens are lined up with the sun. Well, you don't line it up with the sun just so it does it once, it seems a lot of time and effort, it seems like, it's to be aligned with the sun on a regular basis, or else it seems a lot of hard work, I seriously doubt our ancestors would build an entire dolmen to bury one person just so you could have one ceremony for the sun to come up or down once, and then that's it. It doesn't seem to make sense. Whereas, if you've got certain ceremonial, seasonal festivals and things like that, and then, it's put into use, or certain times of the year, like Beltane, and you got Belfast, you've got Samhain and all these, Halloween, all these different. There's so much building and housing going on up there. So actually, I wanted to talk about rewilding. So rewilding this site, it would be a mammoth of a project, and the amount of money involved in it would be kind of mammoth and behemoth. But I think it was a serious mistake to put those houses on there, and the residents probably likely aren't going to be that happy. But if they were given houses and it's bad enough at the moment because the council are already building way too many houses in our area. They need to try and really have other areas to put people to build, because you can choose where to build and where to offer houses. But as for these people, these ones here, I mean, I don't know if you could get a lottery grant or what. If the lottery's called Camelot, and this is Camberdenham, what other heritage project on the face of the planet could necessitate a substantial lottery fund for Camelot? And talk about Watford, there's a Ford coming past it, what's that? So, I don't know how much it'd cost to buy an entire housing estate. There's not that many houses on there. And then, build them some at the top of here, or, going up towards Blacksmith Farms in between Murfield and Kirkheaton, and possibly, a bit out towards out there. To be honest, it needs a picnic site anyway. It could do with a picnic site. There needs to be some sort of rewilding. Now the thing is, right, it's not had the modern archaeology on it, and it's been shut down from archaeology by putting houses on, and then there's the trees with all the roots growing into the side of it. So, how do you get... It's almost like archaeology it's blocked it or banned it from being on there, and unfortunately I believe that is what the idea was. The hidden intent was to do that, unfortunately. You see, in its original context, could it have had, if it had been all woodland around, with the hill raised up and visible in the middle, you know, with the settlement on it, that would look pretty cool, spectacular, not unlike Castle Hill anyway. Or, you know, if it had ancient river around it, you know, was it just the mound surrounded by water, and did it have some trees on? You know, if it had trees growing on it originally, maybe that it didn't actually need any earthworks. And not all mounds do. It's quite steep, so it might have been sufficient enough to have that gradient without necessitating earthworks. I mean, Maiden Castle's got an oswestry. It might have been a specific design different to the others where it didn't have them, but it is the fact it is where it is, and the fact of that river going past and going where it goes, the fact of that river coming where it comes from and what is there where it comes from, and the fact of, you know, Castle Hill there with its view and with the Dunelm place as well. It is just unmistakable. It's unmistakable, and the fact is that there's such a huge, passionate, and devoted following of, you know, for Uffington and the Ridgeway, you know, down in the south, the White Horse and Wayland Smithy, Longbarrow, and they've got the Little Dragon Hill, and then they've got a hill fort with the camp. There's all those things in such a small area, with the Longbarrow, with the Horse, with the hill fort, with the Dragon Hill, and the Ridgeway Walk. And that's why it's so popular, because there is so much there. It's not just, you know, going to a stone circle in Wales, not that there's anything wrong with those, they're beautiful, but it is preservation of, or, you know, the sites are clumped together, and there is clearly a lot going on there. Now, this is what Howard Crowhurst says, there's only 10% remaining of what was left. Now, if we've got this hill fort, with Castle Hill, which is like a Longbarrow anyway, and then we've got the Dunelm and other, and then we've got the Pennine Ridgeway and walks, and then there is the Pool Hill. We've got the whole river route, you know, that could be, at some point, depending on the season of how the water's flowing, could have been traversed by the shallow boats, like the punts. And you used to be able to, before they came in with the canal system and invented barges and horses pulling barges, theoretically, you know, you could have gone to the sea. I know there's quite a few fords and they've concreted them off now, like Castleford and other places, which is a shame, because in some countries, I mean, you might say, oh, it might be dangerous in some other parts, but I mean, why do people go mountain climbing with harnesses and clips? You know, you don't climb up K2 and go, oh, it's too dangerous, you know, or whatever. I know it's a little bit more of an extreme thing, or people go skiing up to the Alps. I've got a friend who lives up in the Alps, and he's doing videos from the top of these mountain tops, and it's a long way down, and they climb up there with all these climbing boots on, with spikes on, or with his, sometimes he's got his skis on, and he climbs up, but it's not easy to get up there, and the views that he's got and shows, you know, he's there with his partner, and it's dangerous, but people are there doing it, you know, it's dangerous driving a Formula 1. You could say there are safety risks at Cambridge. You see, at Cambridge and Oxford and at places like Ross on Wye and other places where they celebrate their river routes, and they have got a infrastructure and business for people to go on leisurely punt rides, and they've even got people to push the punts for them. Yes, those are more modern vessels, and they are, you know, it's all set up for it in a nice steady stream, you know. There are some parts, you know, when you go out of Cambridge, it gets a bit wilder and there's more countryside around it, and then you can go into the town and they've got cafes and things like that, you know. You see, in my head, in my mind, you know, the vision for what Huddersfield could be like, you know, is if we did have things like that. You know, it's a shame at Aspley Wharf Marina, you know, because that barge culture, really, it is one of the nice little things. I would just feel that Aspley Wharf Marina, I mean, it would be I mean, you see, the limitations in the minds of the councillors at Kirklees and Barry Shearman and even Patrick Stewart seem to be limited to having an ice cream in a cafe and a slice of cake on a hill fort in a rectangular cafe that matches a sports centre, which is... it's heavily limited in the imagination. In fact, what did if you watch Ian Fleming's interviews with the BBC, and you can't say that now. Well, I can say it if I'm quoting him because it's an official BBC video. But he says, he mocks the Jews. I don't mock Jews, but quoting, what Fleming said. He said the Jews lack imagination. Well, I would say, Kirklees Council lack of the imagination, and that ain't racist to say Kirklees Council lack imagination, because I ain't singling out one single councillor. It's just a council, I think Kirklees Council do lack imagination. I mean, have they not seen The Lord of the Rings? Have they not seen the Game of Thrones and all these landscapes? And this is what Mark Zuckerberg is wanting to do. Mark Zuckerberg is wanting people to buy the virtual reality goggles and take his hand into a virtual world of, where you're more of a cartoon character and not real, which I kind of find slightly troubling and disturbing, when in the real world, you can, I mean... if you imagine, if there is, if we could get some real archaeological evidence that could find out where any positions of any roundhouses were on there, and if it did have fortifications or not, I mean, to have a replica Celtic village or town on there, I mean, even if it was, even if it was somewhere, look at Bath. It's just the culture and attitude that has not been allowed to fruition here. I mean, if you go somewhere in Bath, right, and even though they've got the Roman baths, they've always had this very, very with it cultural attitude and consciousness. They have mind states conferences there. I was trying to find that word earlier, but I ended up with convention, but it's conferences. They have mind states conferences. They invite people from America and all around the world, speakers, like on psychedelics, like, Sasha and McKenna and people like that, even religious people, and to do talks, I just don't understand why it only seems to happen in Bristol, it only seems to happen in Wiltshire, it only seems to happen in Amesbury. Yet we've got these thick Yorkshire dialect people who kind of, they go, get the thinking cap on, lad, get the uptick cap house, Dumsteeple, get the thinking cap on, West Yorkshire. They've got this, Pontefract cake style kind of, they've got the... It's almost like they've got something, but they haven't. It's not quite. They seem to have lost. They don't have the romance of down south, and when you go down south, you kind of got this atmosphere. It's in the land. It's in the trees. Even when the councillor goes down there, when the Green Party councillor went down there, and he's sat in the woods, and he's doing all these things. He's sat in the woods going, wow, look at these magical woods, and down in Oxfordshire or wherever, and he's doing this talk about rewilding and that lot. And I'm like, what are you doing down there? It's like we've got like some serious ancient Celtic sites that would have been highly significant. And it's not about being better or worse. The fact is, it's not. We're not even getting the recognition, And unfortunately, I think we get the Doctor Who, and then apparently the viewing figures drop down. When you get a Yorkshire Doctor Who, because not that many people are into Yorkshire accents in England. We don't get the best following of accents. So the other valley, what I filmed for the main video for this petition, which is just off this way to the left, that valley is still intact. And then the view of Castle Hill from when you actually go up on the tops, up there, to Upper Hopton, and you can see how beautiful Castle Hill is in its position. Unfortunately, it's got houses and development all around it now, which is a shame. I don't think it's gonna, but I mean, I think that the young people, I think that if you could just click your fingers, right? Let's talk like completely, let's say that, you have got, you're not lacking in the imagination, right? And let's say, all problems and obstacles aside, if you could, right? If you could either have some, have forest around here, rewilded. I mean, you could even grow things, we could be leading the way in experimental crops, some sort of public interaction with growing food, when you've got sort of, like the council, this is the thing, right? Councils have lawnmowers, they go out and mow grass around the estates and lands, right? This is the thing, right? The council of flowers, the council of gardens. My dad used to do the council gardening in Dewsbury. Imagine if the council had lands and it was growing, not like allotment, like when you've got allotments and, you all buy, they've got waiting lists for allotments and they're just, but people got a couple of turnips and a couple of veg and a couple of this or a couple of that, right? There used to be people who had strawberry fields and people who gone there, pay £3 and go picking strawberries. I mean, if you think of the Forest of Dean, they've got trips where people go for the weekend into a lodge and they go picking mushrooms in the Forest of Dean of all sorts of varieties and then they go cook them, right? Now imagine if we had rewilded forests round here, right? And imagine if we had a Celtic village on the top, not with any rectangular modern buildings, we're going like back in time when we go on there, right? And if at night time there is like these, whether it's solar powered or whether you actually have fire, but I don't want to start calling a fire hazard, so I'm going to say solar powered, something modern tech, because I would actually say have a normal fire, but the police and fire brigade probably would want to put a dampener on that idea, but it could be done safely. But I think that if you've got, go for all walks around here through the forest with like, these glowing light balls and kind of like actual magical forest. I'm not saying have gnomes and pixies in there. That's going a bit too far. But just with the walks that are lit at night, and, you could, it's not difficult to inoculate wood and logs with different forms of mushrooms, and you can get the spores for giant puffball mushrooms. You can put them in the fields, like this field now that I was studying when I filmed this. You could inoculate logs in that forest with all these different boletus and all these really not as common mushrooms that are very, very tasty and meaty and good to eat. You could be growing nettles and things like that, which are absolutely packed with nutrients and calcium, actually even encourage male hormones and actually reduce the conversion to DHT, so it's more freely available testosterone. I think that's why the government didn't really want people to have canned nettles, because I don't think they wanted to increase his testosterone. It actually increases the testosterone that doesn't make hair fall out as well. The type of testosterone that's freely available and actually makes you better at sport, not the one that converts over to DHT and makes your hair fall out. So, nettles are actually good. And just, if you've got some fields and land that is not even, it doesn't have to be tidy, but you could have spinach growing in there and people could not fight for it, but be encouraged to go there, even if they had a guy, like when you go up to the park, right? When you go up to the park, right, they've got tennis, right? You've got a little hut. My mate used to work in the hut, right? You go into the hut, right? Oh, give him a couple of quid, right? Here's your tennis rackets. right, go into a tennis court and play tennis. Right, so you've got some land there with some spinach growing and nettles and, you know, stuff like that, or broccoli or whatever, you know, and you could even get the local farmers into it, you know, around here instead of slaughtering cows or whatever. And, you know, you got a guy in a hut. It doesn't have to be, you know, that old-fashioned or rustic. You know, it can be, you know, you can have a heater in it, whatever, and you pay him and you go pick some spinach or nettles rather than having to go to Morrison's because you're getting fit. And it's just a more engaging and hands-on thing. I mean, when you're with people who you get on with, when you're with people who are friends, it's not necessarily what you're doing; it's your company. I mean, all I want to do is you to go drive up to the cinema, sit in the cars, sit in the cinema, sat there, popping popcorn into your mouth, watching Arnold Schwarzenegger. Stood in a jungle with this massive Gatling cannon just going blowing the hell out of empty jungle with a predator while you're sat there popping popcorn into your mouth, right? In theory, you're just sat there watching it, and it might be stimulating your brain like, you know, Mark Zuckerberg tweaking it, but I mean, why just watch Arnie stood there with his muscles flexing, holding this, you know, gun when it's not even real, and then he's shooting this invisible predator thing, when you could actually be there with, you know, 2 or 3 friends chatting and having fun talking, and going and walking around and actually picking some healthy food, or even, you know, and getting some mushrooms, or even if it's like, you know, people coming into the area from further away, you end up meeting other people. You end up meeting people who are coming from down south who have got different, you know, cool attitudes on things, like people from Stonehenge and Wiltshire would come up to West Yorkshire, you know, and things like that, or people Forester Dean will come around here and do things like that. And then they can go up to Castle Hill, it's got an amazing view around that place, and then I'll see it from up there, where you could have like a picnic area, and things. It doesn't have to, you know, you don't have to be, you see, right? How about, right? This is the thing, right? Why have a cafe with a chef, with a fridge with cans of Coke in it, with whatever, whether you've got, you know, Gordon Ramsay, whatever, even if fucking Gordon Ramsay's in there, right? With Patrick Stewart, you know, side table, you know, what's, you know, why not go pick some amazing, you know, leaves and things like that, or some really unique and diverse mushrooms that there are actually some amazing ones that are not that commonly available, just because we don't have them around this area as much and hard to find. But if you inoculate with them, then there's a lot more of them. And then you can go up to the place that is up by where the Freemasons' Arms was, and then you could sort of like cook it yourself. I mean, there's a place in Milnes Bridge where you used to go in there, and I think it was not a Thai place. What was it now? It was like one of those what's it called? Mongolian. And I remember walking in, and there was all these shelves, right, with the food in. Like, you picked up it was like raw meat and stuff like that, and then some veg and that. And what you did is you picked up all the raw ingredients. It was like, you know, like when you get pick and mix for sweets, but it was all like, and then you chucked it in a pan, and then you gave it to the chef, and he got a live fire there, and then he was just tossing it around and cooking your food while you were there in front of him. I mean, you could go into the forest, get the mushrooms, get the leaves and all stuff like that, and then you could go up to the place that's up at, you know, at Opton, if the council had bought, or a company like Tandy would have bought that Freemasons' Arms building, and then you could take all these things there, and then you could have a beautiful kind of partly woodland, partly outside place with glowing lights on the night, and you could look and watch the sun going down at Castle Hill behind it, right by the Pennine Ridge, while you've got all this stuff that you're just going to pick down in the freaking woods here, right? And then Sandy's making money out of it, and actually getting healthy, you know, not live squealing animal and pork pigs, some proper decent healthy food. And I actually think the Green Party councillor actually would support that idea, and I actually think the Green Party itself would support that idea. And I think that the reason that the Imperial Chemical Industries camp, the royalist camp, don't want that is because it would be so interesting, it would be so bloody healthy, and people would get exercise, and so many people would come from the country that it would absolutely annihilate the entire pork farming pig industry to kingdom come, because people would actually be walking around at night in an absolutely atmospheric, beautiful, enchanting environment, and then all the locals would be able to go there as well. And then if you actually buy them all some nice houses, you know, and put them in a high up place where they've actually got a view, you know, a bit further back, but they can see it, they won't be complaining and saying, oh, we're trying to kick them out or anything, because they'd say, right, we're going to make Huddersfield literally into this amazing place that you can enjoy too. And I think that all these local people, rather than just pushing prams around and litter blowing past them with the kids, I think that if you made them something like that, then their attitude would change and they'd feel more respected themselves. They'd feel more respected, and they'd feel more the council care more about them, and the government cared more about them. And then if you've got people coming up from the south to visit, and you see, West Yorkshire used to be known for being really friendly and welcoming, and I don't know what happened. It's because of Facebook, really, and Zuckerberg, and it's sad, really, because Nick Clegg is meant to be a liberal, and Nick Clegg is meant to symbolise, you know, liberalism, but yet he is advocating a Facebook group where he believes in just block people if you don't want to talk to them, which is not friendly, because that's not what West Yorkshire used to be known for. I've travelled all over these places, and to be honest, I'm saying the places down south are beautiful and nice, but I've always recognised West Yorkshire for having friendly, caring people. It has done. And I think Facebook, to be honest, has kind of been a bit detrimental to it, and a lot of the new wave internet movement, it seems to be less tolerant, you know, and I think that West Yorkshire has actually got a lot to offer in being friendly, you know. And then you see, and then that gets you more interested in the Scottish sites, and Scotland are wanting to try and, you know, encourage more tourism or whatever, you know. And also, I think all of the heritage sites would benefit from it, but the problem is that so far, I don't think the government has really wanted to put much into that heritage, because they prefer their own heritage, and they prefer, if it's Stonehenge, it's always an exhibition and moving things around. Oh, we'll move everything, can we borrow this, can we borrow that, bang it all in Stonehenge, you know, an exhibition. It's not in its rightful place in context. I think it's quite sad moving things from the place you found it, the place that it was at, or installed at. I think there's something kind of, oh, we'll borrow it. You know, it's almost like, you know, borrowing somebody's arm. It's like, you know, you wouldn't pull someone's arm off and borrow their arm and then take it back again, would you? It's a bit weird, you know. It's a bit of a strange thing to do, you know. And you know, I think it's a good thing to go to these places and see the context of the landscape that it's actually in. You know, because until you come here and you see the layout of it, oh, that's there, and then the river comes past there, and unfortunately, it's kind of all been shrapnelled in at the moment, and you can't really understand what you're actually looking at, you know, until you know the route of the river and where its source is and what comes from up there and where it goes past and where it goes to. I don't think you can appreciate it, you know. And I think that it's because of that period when, you know, it's sort of been a progression, but really it started with that tower, really. And you could say that the invention of the railway system contributed towards it, and travel, and then photography, and people get to see. Once people got to see the photographs of places, or people who in the know, the academics, and then people got to travel a bit more, then they got the capacity to intervention. And unfortunately, there were certain camps that had certain priorities of their own prerogatives and things like that. And ours had become secondary to the... well, it is to the imperial prerogative, because it ended up being imperial chemical industries. And we've suffered. It's not that long ago when it were fields here and people were playing up on there. It's only maybe like I said, 2 generations, two, a granddad and a great granddad, 2 people since when it's ended up being like this. You can't say, oh, my granddad's granddad's, it's all built up in mills, because that's not true. Because, 50 years ago, they had the Great Yorkshire Show at the end of there or whatever, and it was fields. It's been a relatively new mistake, which I think needs to be rectified. There are plenty of places you can have factories which shouldn't infringe on ancient sites and heritage, really. And then there's the whole thing where they've been taking a lot of production and industry abroad anyway. So it's a bit sad and unfortunate that there's a bit of lack of the imagination, and it may be too late, to fulfill a complete vision, like something from, Lothlorien or something like that, because it's that hillside there, for example, is absolutely blitzed. When in due process of blitzing it now, but I think that with the right institutions and the right heritage organisations on the right side, with the right vision, I mean, there are some very big movements now on the internet, like there are the psychedelic movements and things like that. And these sites have got that heritage. This is what these sites are about. And, it's unfortunately, it got obliterated at some point. But that's what it is, These sites are intimately connected with the origins of religion, yet the only places that get venerated for religion now are York Cathedral and Canterbury Cathedral. So, and then it's also about educating other people.